All right, we are back in Studio K with Brother Ali. How are you feeling coming off that performance?
Man, I'm just so happy to be in this place again. So when I was rapping from the time I was a little kid, but then when I was college age, I didn't go to college. But when I was around that age, I discovered the hip hop show at Radio K at that time, which was called the Beatbox. And I heard them on the radio, and I heard the music. I'd never heard underground hip hop music like that before.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know that there was a whole scene. So like in the mid '90s, when things got really like people started wearing shiny suits and stuff, like when Diddy was doing his thing, I was like, oh, I guess this isn't for me anymore. Like I was like 20 and I thought I aged out of hip hop, and so I was just like, oh, I don't like this anymore. This is not what I like. But then when I heard the beatbox show on Radio K, I was like, this is amazing. So all the people that I heard have become my friends, and I came in here, and the people that were running the show at that time, one of them was my DJ, BK1, who's still my partner. It was his show. And I met all of the Rhyme Sayers guys here for the first time because I'm from North Minneapolis, they're from South Minneapolis, which was like, might as well be different countries, especially at that time. So a lot of my foundational memories of early like community and me starting to, when I met Atmosphere, it's like, oh, I can actually have a career. I don't have to be famous to be able to actually put music out that people hear. And that all happened in this exact place. And it's still the same. It smells the same, looks the same, everything. So I'm very, very happy to be here. It means a lot.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you in. And that kind of leads into, one of the questions I was going to ask is about how you first got involved in like the local hip hop scene and like when you first started rapping, like who were your big inspirations?
Well, I started rapping when I was a little kid. So my inspirations at that time were Rakim, Public Enemy, KRS-One. Like those were the big ones. But I mean, I was a fan of every part of hip hop up until around the Puff Daddy time. And that was the first time that I was like, I don't recognize this. And it was very strange to have to say, like, it was my whole identity from the time I was a little kid. And so for there to be a section of it, because I mean, I liked what ended up being called gangster rap. My favorite was conscious hip hop, but I mean, I liked everything. I was like, I love this whole culture because I love the whole community that produces it, you know? And so, yeah, those were the big influences. But I mean, I love different parts of, all of the whole culture.
And I know you kind of came up in the battle rap scene. How did you first get involved in that?
Everybody had to do it. Like it was, if you wanted to be respected as a lyricist and as an MC, meaning if you weren't part of the Puffy thing. I don't mean to keep talking about this guy, but like that was a big separation at that time. That was a story at the time that it happened because so many people were thinking like, man, when did this become like, yeah, our favorite rappers might drive a Benz, but they're from the projects. And maybe they still live in the projects, and definitely all their friends and family still live there. So for them to have a Benz was like, wow, in racist America, you're not supposed to do that. And they did it from making music that elevated the whole community. So that meant something, or a chain or something like that, to be like, wow, just from perfecting this cultural art form that uplifts us all, this person got successful and they actually beat the system. That's what it meant for a long time. And then when that whole thing happened, started to feel very different. But so for anybody, from the beginning and especially through that time, if you weren't going to be a person that was trying to go for pop radio, you had to battle. Otherwise, you wouldn't be respected. And so I didn't necessarily want to do it, but it's something that you had to do.
Uh-huh. I found an old interview of you where you said the only person who's ever beat you at a battle rap was Sage Francis. Is that true?
Yeah. So I was the only person to beat Idea. And, our dear friend, one of the greatest of all time, who passed away. And then Sage Francis beat me. But I was never the level of battler that a lot of people are. I did it a little bit just to become known. And it did help me. Especially when I beat Idea, that was a big deal because no one had ever beat him before or after that. And so that would be like beating Eminem at that time, And so that was a big deal. And we were friends. I actually rode, it was in Cincinnati, which is 12 hours away. I rode to Cincinnati with him, and his grandparents drove us all in this big van to Cincinnati. And then he had won the year before. And then I beat him. And he was like, man, you beat me now. You better win. He's like, if you're going to take me out, you better win the trophy. And then Sage Francis beat me. And so I didn't get the trophy. And I just went back and I was like sleeping on the floor in the hotel room. And I felt so crazy that now I had to ride back with them. But yeah, it wasn't something that I really necessarily wanted to do. And so I did it just long enough to make it known that I could do it. But for me, it was always about performing live shows and making albums.
Uh-huh, for sure. So your most recent album, Satisfied Soul, came out in February. Was it on Valentine's Day it came out?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was on Mellow Music.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering what the process was like of working with that label now that you've stepped away from Rhymesayers.
It was really easy because we made 2 albums at the same time. So I put out 2 albums in the last year. One is called Love and Service. I made that with an anti-Zionist Jewish producer. He's from Ohio, but he was living in the Bay. So he was actually at those battles, but he was, a lot younger. And so we connected during the pandemic and started making an album called Love and Service. And we thought it was cool that it's like a Muslim MC and a Jewish producer that became really dear friends, making an album called Love and Service. It's all about love and service. And then when we actually had a distributor for both albums, for Satisfied Soul with Ant, Love and Service with a guy called Unjust, who's the producer, the Jewish producer. This big distributor was going to put both albums out. They were very excited. They heard the music, everything's great. And then as we were finishing the album, October 7th happened. And the Unjust, the producer, his wife, who's also a Jewish woman, said, like, you guys have to there needs to be a song with a Muslim and a Jewish person together talking about what's going on in Palestine, like speaking up for the Palestinians, telling the truth about colonialism, genocide, apartheid, all this stuff. So it was like, okay, cool. So we made the song, and it's the last song we made. It's called The Collapse. He's also an animator, illustrator. He did a really amazing animated video for it. And immediately the distributor ghosted us. So we had already spent tens of thousands of dollars manufacturing the album to the highest standards. I hired the same. All of my projects before that, they were all covered in Rolling Stone and Billboard and Double XL and all of the biggest publications in music. I'm not famous like that, but I'm well known enough, and it's always a very interesting story. And so the people that write for those magazines have covered everything I've done since the early 2000s, and this one, no one would touch it. And so we put the Love and Service album out by ourselves, and it's almost like it never even came out. It's like 2 million streams or something on streaming services, but in terms of the industry, like most of our fans don't even know it came out. So with the Satisfied Soul album, it's like, okay, it's not as political an album. Let's see if we need to partner with somebody that knows how to make sure that people at least know this album came out. But it was completely finished. We did the artwork ourselves. We were planning to put it out ourselves. And at the very last minute, Merce, who's one of the great underground hip hop artists, he actually suggested that we do it with Mellow Music. So we had a very brief conversation with them. They wrote up maybe a 1 or 2 page agreement. But the fact that we went in there already knowing exactly what we wanted, everything was finished. We financed it all ourselves. So it was an independent record that we had a partner. We brought them in as a partner, and I dictated the terms completely. I said, this is the percentage you should get. This is how I want to be reimbursed. This is all this stuff. And so it was really cool and easy because of the fact that we did so much of it ourselves.
Uh-huh. And I know that over this last year or two, there's been a lot of issues with like blacklisting and like publications being scared to speak about you.
Yeah, festivals and colleges. So no major press anymore, no festivals and no colleges. I was actually booked on my last tour, we did get an invitation to a college, to Virginia Tech. I don't name names in the music industry. So if somebody does something to me that I don't like, I'll talk about my experience, but I don't name their name because I don't want to harm people. The intention isn't to start beef. It's not to be messy. It's not to cancel people. It's just to talk about my experience. But, with an institution like Virginia Tech, I'll say that they invited us. They were going to pay us profoundly less than what we normally make. But I was just so happy to get a college show again. And so we took it. And then they called us and said, look, we have to uninvite you. And the reason was because on college campuses, if they do something, so they said, you're going to do Uncle Sam, my song I just did. And during that song, I made it in 2007, but I always break that song down and I say something about a current political thing that's in the vein of what the song is about. Mm-hmm. So, and I've always been pro-Palestine my whole career. Like I've done this a long time. And so now I say free Palestine from the river to the sea, which is like, that's the thing that people really take a certain way. It's a statement that's meant to be thoughtful. And I was trying to make the strongest statement that I could, because I do one line. It's not, I don't have Palestinian flags and everything, but it's one thing and it's with the music broken down. So it's very clear. No one can miss it. And so they said, we know you're going to do that. And we, the people that talk said, we believe in your right to say that. But if you've got a crowd of people, and when you say that, everyone's going to cheer. If somebody just gets that little clip of you saying that, and that gets released on social media, it looks like a pro-Palestine rally. And then they said it's mostly Muslim students from other countries that are organizing to bring you to campus. Those people could be deported or detained. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that happen where people are just, they're just detained indefinitely and nobody knows where they are and they just get pulled off the street. So they said, like, we hate to do this, but it's in everybody's best interest that we uninvite you. And, they didn't pay me for it. Normally, if you have a contract and the other party cancels, they have to pay. Mm-hmm. Just like, for whatever reason. If I miss my flight and I don't show up, then I have to, So, yeah, no festivals, no major press, and no colleges, which all of that as an independent artist, I'm not on the radio. There was a time when I was on TV, but I'm not on TV anymore. And so social media and those outlets are the main ones where we get to spread the word. And now there's not any of that.
Yeah, I'm really happy we could still have you in here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope nobody gets, I mean, it's, it would be great if it was just if it was a myth or something like that, but it's very real. Mm-hmm. Especially for foreign-born students, and especially if they come from countries that are on the travel ban. The precedent is already set for those people to have real problems.
And I know this isn't your first time dealing with some of these issues, because after that Uncle Sam song came out, there were some issues with Homeland Security, like
I've been harassed by Homeland Security ever since then. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. Yeah, they froze. I was in Australia actually, performing, and that was when YouTube was brand new. That's what's big sound like that. YouTube didn't always exist, and so that was one of the first times that as an independent artist you could put a music video up and people could decide what they want to watch. So it was like one of the first independent music videos to start getting millions of views, and so yeah, it made a ripple. And I was in Australia, and we got a message from the bank saying the wire transfer, all of the payment for the tour had been sent to the bank account here, and the Department of Homeland Security intercepted our funds. And in order for them to release it, I had to call them, and they basically let me know that we're tracking you now. And so I've been off and on. There's times where it'll be really bad for maybe 6 months, and then I won't experience it for a year. And then there's times where 2 years, every flight, I'm harassed, I'm pulled off airplanes, questioned at every stage. I've been held for hours. I've had situations where, so they have different tactics. So sometimes they intentionally try to insult and irritate you, because they think that if you're hiding secrets, that if you're irritated in your anger, you may say things that they can use in their investigation. If you mention a friend's name, they become part of a Homeland Security investigation. So if they say, who are you staying with? I'm staying with my friend, Leroy. Leroy who? Well, suddenly Leroy is part of their investigation now. Mm-hmm. But if they ask you a question and you don't answer it, then now they're, and they will intentionally try to irritate you and to make you, to try to prompt you to say stuff that you normally wouldn't say. And, so recently my children have been getting, it's called 4S. So you go to check in a flight online and you can't check in online. It's like, okay. And then you get your boarding pass and it has 4 S's at the bottom. S is for security. So 4 is the highest level before they say you can't fly. So you can still legally fly, but you can't, you're subject to whatever they want to put you through. So, I mean, I've missed flights and not been able to pick up my children. And lately, my teenage daughter was traveling with me, and they gave her 4S. So it's a very intense type of harassment that can make it traumatic to fly. They can search your body. They can search your clothes. They can get on a plane and interview you in front of everybody, and then just get off the plane and leave you sitting there, and everybody's looking at you like you're dangerous or something now. And they do that to, with my children too. So it's very real. And there's when people say, why doesn't so-and-so speak up? Why doesn't so-and-so speak up? Well, you're asking them to throw their entire livelihood away. You're asking them to throw their dream away. I'm just fortunate that I came up in conscious political hip hop music where that was going to be part of my platform no matter what. So it's not a choice that I made. It's not like I was rapping about being in the club and then was like, oh, this issue touched me, so now I'm making this type of song. I've always been that artist. And so for me, it wasn't a decision. It's just who I am. But there's very real consequences for, somebody and the bigger you are, the bigger the consequences are. There are some people that are beyond canceling. But for the most part, you will lose all your endorsements, and you'll lose your big slots, and you'll lose the opportunity to be on TV. Even people that are really big, there's nobody bigger than the industry itself. And so, I would love for more people to speak up, but I also understand that you're asking them to close their business, basically. Mm-hmm. And the bigger you are, the more people you feed. I feed 3 people. There's a time when I fed 10. Somebody that's on a big scale, they're feeding 100 people. They are a corporation that feeds all these people. And if they decide to start speaking out, they might have to lay off the majority of those people. So, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to live through.
And yeah, I'm sure all that is especially difficult now that you're living in Turkey. You've been living there for 5 years now.
Yeah.
So we're really happy you can still be here.
Me too. Thank you.
And I was curious. So now that you're living in another country, because your activism has always seemed to be pretty centered around local issues, like tackling American issues and also like Minnesota issues. So now that you're living in a new country, I was curious, has that kind of reshaped or recentered your activism in any way? Or
yeah, well, like? I'm not an activist there. Mm-hmm. So the way that I see things is like, I criticize groups that I'm in. I like my critique and my activism and my, bringing pressure to bear and things like that is for groups that I'm in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because in almost at every intersection of all that stuff, I'm part of the dominant group. So that just seems that's always felt natural to me. And so being in another country where I'm not in any of those groups. Also, I don't pay taxes there. I don't vote there. And I don't have a big listener group there. In America, I pay taxes. So everybody that pays taxes has a right to say something, even if you don't pay taxes. But I also have the right to vote here, whether I do or not. So I have something to say about it because of that. Also, I feel like I understand, like I'm of this culture, so I understand the nuances of it, I think, very well. Mm-hmm. And then also my listeners are here. So if I speak out about something, I actually have the ability to affect people who also have those as realities here. Whereas in Turkey, it's like none of those things are true. And also, the history of every other country, especially if they're not a major world superpower, is affected by Western imperialism, colonialism. And so that's part of why it's like, man, I will criticize groups I'm in. Mm-hmm. Which does not include anything about Turkey, other than the fact that I'm Muslim, but Islam is not a global superpower. It's just not. There's not a Muslim country, and during the time of the Ottoman Empire, it was. So if I was a member of the Ottoman Empire, I would probably have something to say about what they were doing. But yeah, so it's changed it in the sense that now I have the people who listen to me. And I deal with that mostly on the level of meaning instead of policy. Mm-hmm. What I've discovered for me in this moment is that we all have specific, unique gifts, and that we all have an opening. So it's like, well, what's my opening? My opening is my opportunity. I don't choose my opening. I don't choose my audience. I don't choose what they're willing to listen to. But my audience listens to me on a heart level. So talking to them about policy and things like that might not work as well. But there are certain things in terms of on a heart level, So I can talk about my experience as an immigrant in Istanbul. Me and my daughter were deported from Istanbul, and we didn't have anywhere to go for a couple weeks. And that's not the same as a Guatemala, a Peruvian family being thrown. It's not the same. But talking about my story and if a fan listener looks like me and identifies with me, and they say like, oh, he got deported, he was separated from his family, he didn't know when he would be able to go home. I filled out all the papers, I did everything right. It's just very hard to be an immigrant anywhere, and especially when you have a hostile administration and racism. I wasn't kept out of Turkey because of racism. I was kept out of Turkey because they're having a financial crisis, and it's just easier for the people who aren't in power to blame the immigration for it. So, so for me, my activism has changed a lot, and 20-year-old me would have felt like, man, this is not, you're punking out. This isn't hardcore. You know what I mean? I used to go to jail, and I used to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I used to go to jail for my activism, and I still believe in that. But just the position that I'm in right now, that's not my opening. And part of doing this this isn't a 5-year period for me. Like some people go through a radical period, usually around college time. Like people are like, they get involved for. Man, I've been doing this for a lifetime, and I will always do that. So it's like it's got to be marathon thinking for me, and so that's what it looks like at this moment. Maybe it'll change someday, but right now that's what it is.
Uh-huh. And you mentioned during that performance that your song Uncle Sam, that was the first hip hop song played on TV in Iran.
Performed it live on TV in Iran, and then they played it over and over and over again.
Wow.
I was tricked into that. So one of the things that I knew I was doing is that I got invited by a group in Iran to come to a conference they were hosting about Black Lives Matter, about police violence towards black people in America. That's a very specific thing that a lot of the artists that I look up to, like Nina Simone and Paul Robeson, activist artists in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, those are the type of things that they would do. Is that, America is saying Cuba is so horrible for human rights. And so Cuba would hold something to say, but look how you treat your black citizens. Or they would say, Russia is terrible for. Artists from that culture would go there. It's a tactic. It's a pretty revolutionary activist type of tactic that's going to have blow. I knew that going in. But it's like, this is what my heroes did. This is the kind of thing that I would sign up to do. So I went to do it, and hip-hop is illegal in Iran. Because anything that's too directly Western culture, so like you can't have McDonald's in Iran. And it's not because they hate hip-hop, it's because they realize that even if you're not invaded by the military, if you have certain cultural things, just will automatically usher in a type of thinking where you don't have to invade people. They'll start demanding Western-style government and life and economics and things like that. They'll start demanding capitalism. They'll start demanding all this stuff. And so their leaders just say, like, we don't do McDonald's, we don't do Netflix, you can't get on whatever, and no rap music. So Harry Belafonte, the legendary singer and activist, did a thing where in Cuba it was illegal. So he met with Fidel Castro. He knew Fidel Castro, and he met with the rappers in Cuba that had a message that Castro would like. And Fidel Castro promised to give them freedom to do that for a day. And so then he went to the rappers and he said, look, you're going to perform for Fidel. And you can show him that there is favorable hip-hop music. And so they all agreed to it, knowing what they were going into. And then they performed, and he lifted the ban on hip-hop music. They were trying to do that in Iran, but they didn't tell me that's what they were doing. So I got there, and I'm just performing my pieces a cappella because there's nothing wrong with poetry. And then the last day, they said, look, we really wanted you to do Uncle Sam. And they knew how to get, because they had all these students from Senegal. I go to Gambia, Senegal every year in West Africa. It's like, Muslim country. a lot of enslaved Africans came from that place. Kunta Kinte, the famous story of roots, like I know his descendant in the Gambia, and that's Senegal and Gambia are basically the same country. So like all these Gambians are there, and they're like, yeah, they started cheering like we want to hear Uncle Sam. And the woman that was putting the conference together said, we want to hear it with the music. Do you have the beat? We invited Brother Ali that we see on YouTube. That's what we want to see. And so there's like clerics there, like religious leaders that are also representative of the government. And so I asked their permission, and they said, yeah, go ahead. So I get up at the podium, I perform the song. I just happened to have it on my iPod. I do the song. First of all, they had a big sound system all ready to go. So that already, I was like, hotels don't have these. Why do you have a concert sound system? All right, anyway, perform the song. It sounds great. I'm feeling it. And then immediately afterwards, they come to me and say, hey, your performance is on the news. And it's like, what do you mean it's on the news? You can't put something on TV. It's all government controlled. So, okay, somebody here has a connection at the government. That's bizarre. So it gets shown on the news. So then suddenly my Instagram gets flooded with all of these local hip hop artists. And it's death threats because they're thinking, oh, you're a puppet of the government. They're thinking the government brought me in to rap, and they're not allowed to. And I would never go to a place where there's a community and not check in with the community. If I knew I was going to be rhyming, I would have checked in with them. I'm just thinking I'm going to a conference where I might recite some poetry. So I didn't check in with them. So they're just looking on TV and they see this, they're like, oh, this white rapper is on TV performing, and he's just a pawn, and we go to jail for that. So it's death threats. Also, the name of the hotel was on the podium where I was performing, so they all knew where I was staying. And I had to give them my passport to get a key for my hotel room, so I don't have my passport. I can't, the ATM doesn't work because of sanctions. Your credit card doesn't work because of sanctions. Your phone can't get online because of sanctions. I'm completely isolated. But all these organizers have keys to my hotel room, mostly because they're serving me. They're like, what kind of tea do you like? So I told them I like mint tea. So in between every session, I'm in my hotel room chilling, and the door will just open. And it's a guy with a tray, like serving me the tea I said I like. But like, I'm getting death threats, man. And people are just walking in my room and they know where I'm staying. And I don't know how serious to take that. And then it's illegal, and they're replaying it on the news every 15 minutes. Every time I'm in the lobby of the hotel, I see on TV like, oh, there's me rapping, which is illegal. I don't know what's going to happen from that. You know, people are recognizing me on the streets when we try to go eat. And I'm just like, man, I'm not safe here. These people don't care about my safety. And they're planning stuff that I wasn't consulted about. So I go to the airport, and you can't change your flight. And I can't buy a new flight because my credit card doesn't work. And I can't communicate with the people at home because my internet is cut off. And so, and I can't even get money out of the ATM. I don't have any money. So I sat in the airport. I had enough money. A poet friend of mine, Amir Suleiman, gave me a little bit, whatever little cash he had. I was like, hey, I got to bounce. He was like, do you have money? I said, no. So he gave me the equivalent of like $20 that he had in his pocket. Was just like, I'm so sorry, man. Let me know when you get home. So when you make it home safe. So I go to the airport, and I didn't have anywhere to stay. I was in the airport for 3 days, sleeping on my luggage. I had enough money to buy a piece of cake every day. That's because I knew that that'll keep me going. I'm fat. So like, I was like, all right, cake. I know I can live on cake alone. But like, and then I'm sleeping on my luggage, and somebody will wake me up, and they're like, is that you on TV in the airport? Yeah. And they would just straight up say to me, like, isn't that illegal? Yeah. Are you safe? I don't know. I don't know if I'm safe. Finally got out. Finally made it home. Normally when I come home, like I said, Department of Homeland Security harasses me. This time I get home, I got rerouted into Miami. I get off my flight in Miami, and they're taking everybody's passport. I'm like, man, I'm about to be in here for 4 hours. I just know it. The guy who's taking passports, I go to hand him my passport, and he won't take it. He just says, welcome home, Brother Ali. So it's like he already knew. They already knew, you know.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm like, okay, where do we go talk? He's like, no, welcome home, Brother Ali. Glad you made it home. It's like, damn. And so then, yeah, the surveillance after that only got worse. They came to my house on my birthday. They tried to come in my house. You know, I had to say, like, if you don't have a warrant, you can't come in. And I thought that this would happen if I got famous. I thought if like I ever get very famous, I'm gonna speak out. But then if I'm Snoop Dogg famous, then it'll, if I'm not Snoop Dogg famous, it's not really good. I'll just I'll be preaching to the choir. I thought I could just preach to the choir and be safe. No, they watch everybody. Anybody with any type of following and fan base, And every time I'm questioned, I ask the same first question. I say, I'll answer your question, but you got to start answering mine. Do you think I've ever been a part of something violent? Do you think I've ever encouraged people to be violent? Do you think that there's any threat to anybody coming from me? Or is it just that you know that I'm critical of the government because I'm supposed to be allowed to do that? And I believe that it actually is a service to the society in general, because from governing, just from having a government, there's going to be anger. There's going to be rage. People's lives get destroyed by governments. It's just how it works. And when you have an artistic outlet for that anger, you have something productive, a way to filter that anger. And so what people like me and Public Enemy and others do is a service to the society. It's not going to feel like a service to the government because they're like, you're out here. Like, no, I'm saying things that people are thinking. Every time I say Free Palestine from the River to the Sea on stage, the whole audience, especially right away, now it's becoming more and more popular. But especially, I was doing that in November of 2023, was it? Mm-hmm. Like, I was doing that in November. I did a big tour in November. Haven't had a big tour since then. And the audience would go crazy because you couldn't hear anybody say that. No one was saying that in public at that time. So it's like, this is what people think and feel. And if they never hear it said and nobody ever gives it a voice and never acknowledges it, it's not like it goes away. So I always tell them, like, I'm doing you a service. I'm doing our society a service, whether you see it that way or not. Having artistic outlets for the righteous anger of people at, like, why do I have to fund people bombing hospitals and killing journalists? Has nothing to do with hatred for anybody. You know what I mean? I just said it on stage. I was on stage in Dallas. I got to that line. Somebody threw a bottle of beer at me and ran out. And the people in the audience were like, he was waiting for you to say that. He threw a bottle of beer at me, and I got soaked with the beer, but it actually hit my DJ abilities. Legendary Twin Cities DJ. It hit the DJ, and it got all over the equipment. What the person, and he yelled that I was anti-Semitic. The bottle actually hit my DJ abilities is Jewish. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is the insanity of the moment that we're in. But it's the empire of illusion. Like, this place is the empire of illusion. So yeah, Iran, it's all connected. And do I love everything Iran does? No, I wouldn't live in Iran. I'm not the same type of Muslim as them. It's authoritarian. It's all of that. Some would even say it's fascist. I wouldn't live in Iran. I wouldn't live in Saudi Arabia. There's places that even though I could live there, they wouldn't, like, Saudi Arabia makes it so easy for somebody like me. I won't live there. I'll visit the holy sites, but I won't live there. But I have the right to go there. When the military people, I got military people in my family, they say, like, we're defending your right to be able to say that. It's like, cool, defend it then. Defend it, defend it across the board. So I told you certain questions, I'll just go on and on.
And what year was that you were in Iran?
2016, maybe?
Okay.
15, 16, something like that.
Yeah, that's just a wild story.
And it was legal to go there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it still is, but at that time it was legal to go to Iran. It's just like, did I break a law? You know what I mean? I broke one law one time where I did civil disobedience in Minneapolis doing Occupy Homes, fighting for, and there was a new Bill of Rights for homeowners that was passed because of that movement that we did. I made the choice to be arrested so that would become a news story. That's the only. I became Muslim at 15, and we're not allowed to break laws. So it's like, haven't broken any laws. I've not done anything violent. Everything I'm doing, the Constitution says I'm supposed to be able to do. And so it's like, yeah, I'm supposed to have the freedom of religion. Yes, I converted to Islam. I was an imam in North Minneapolis. You're allowed to do that. Yes, I criticize the government in my music and in interviews. You're allowed to do that. That's what this country's supposed to be. So it's like, do you really believe, like these people, like you're doing this in the name of America, do you really believe in it? Because I'm supposed to be allowed to do this.
Yeah, for sure. And switching gears a little bit, just because I know you
Puppies.
have
Let's
to
talk
go
about
sort of
puppies
soon.
and rainbows. And like, yeah. Let's talk about something happy so we don't end on it.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want. We talk about whatever you want.
Well, so I know that for your whole career, you've always worked with like independent artists. Like you were on Rhymesayers for most of your career.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked with a lot of other independent MCs. So I was wondering what it means to you to stay independent, why that's so important, and if there's any smaller labels or artists you're keeping an eye on today.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's usually the case that if somebody is independent, they have more freedom artistically and in terms of message and things like that. It's not always the case. And I don't think it's necessarily evil for somebody to be on a label or something like that. And the lines are getting blurrier and blurrier because it's like, yeah, I'm an independent artist, but I need Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? My music's on Spotify, and they are, what is it they're doing? Like perfecting AI to help drones and things like that.
Yeah.
Like they kill people. So it's like, all right, well, yeah, you're not on Sony, but you're on Spotify. And I'm on social media. And I use, the products. I'm on Apple. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you just do your best to try to be as independent as possible. Jay-Z started his career with as Rockefeller. That was an independent label. And then he became the president of Def Jam, and he was all of this stuff. So it's not as clear cut as it used to be, but for me, it's meant that I have a little bit more of a chance to have artistic freedom. I would say when I was on Rhymesayers, I was always supported fully in saying whatever I wanted to say. And that was really beautiful. You also hope that financially it'll be better. And I think in most cases it is, but that gets blurry too. Because like I said, just like, yeah, I believe in all this stuff, but my music's on Spotify. An independent label or an independent artist can believe in all this stuff, but like the second you start employing people, you're part of capitalism. You're competing in all of capitalism. And so these labels, they participate in capitalism. It's the way it works. You know what I mean? Especially if you want to grow. Like if you want to grow what you do, which everyone that I've never seen a thing be a small indie cool niche thing. So like a record store opens and it was like this place with just piles of records and people that love records hanging out and talking about records. And like we loved it. We like when Fifth Element, for example, like was like that. There was a store, Fifth Element on 24th and Hennepin. It was Rhymesayers headquarters. They didn't have an office. They had a record store. So, I mean, you would go there and like atmosphere would be chill. All of us would just be in there chilling. And all the local artists could go in there and it was a community kind of thing. And then, then everything went digital. And so it's like, oh, we can't sell enough records to keep this open. Mm-hmm. So it shifted to become a boutique thing where you start buying other types of stuff. And after a while, it turned into this kind of boutique that none of us wanted to be there anymore. So we stopped hanging out there. And it's like, I hate that for us, you know what I mean? But it's like you either do that or close. A tiny little record shop could no longer be, what it was at that time. And also the rent went up. So it's like, man, it's very difficult. And so I've remained independent because it's felt like the right thing for me to do. But there are no perfect answers. We're in a situation where there's just a bunch of bad decisions, and you got to just figure out which feels like the right one for me in this moment.
Absolutely. And I know you've got to take off in a minute here, so just one final question is just if you have any shows coming up or any other recordings or announcements you want the people to know about.
Yeah, so it's been a really productive couple of years musically. So the Love and Service album is the one that basically got blacklisted by the industry. Like, man, even the independent industry, it's like, man, I could not get anybody. The only people so Chuck D from Public Enemy played it on his radio station, which is amazing. Amy Goodman at Democracy Now, she played it. That was dope. And then there's a great, a legendary hip hop DJ and guy named Bobito Garcia. He had me on his Instagram live. But like those are not major platforms, you know what I mean? So if people are hearing this and they're like, man, this guy's really going through it, how can I help? BrotherAli.com is our website, but the Love and Service album is the one that got ignored. We also put out one called Satisfied Soul. And then I do have another project coming soon of like self-produced stuff that's like really very special to me. So yeah, if you go Brother Ali is Blind on social media, on Instagram, and then brotherali.com is our website. Like if you buy direct, if you love an independent artist, follow them on social media and actually search them because their algorithm won't show you our stuff. Go to their website, sign their mailing list. Like these are ways to really, and try to buy their stuff directly from them if you can. Anything independent is that way.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again so much for coming in. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you. And what you guys are doing is dope. This is like, because this is a place where you can really be part of a community and where you can really have like real human interactions with music. And it's really, really dope. Like being in here again, I'm like, man, my career in part exists because of this place. Like what we were doing in the late 90s is exactly what you guys are doing. It's dope.
Yeah.
And like people in this room and people that you know will end up doing something really cool in music. And nobody knows who it is yet, but and maybe all of y'all will do it in different ways, but it's a very, very real thing. You guys have stepped outside of the bubble and of the algorithms and of the the social media isolation, and you're with people doing real things, and it's really dope. I really salute you, because we had no choice, but you guys are choosing this, which is it's a revolutionary thing.
Yeah, thanks so much. We really appreciate that. You've been listening to Brother Ali live on Radio K, Real College Radio.